No, Jax is a kind of warrior. So when I said, Jax, what do you want me to call you as? She said, oh, call me a chameleon. Many people have this negative opinion about being a chameleon, but in entire coaching and trainings, we talk about behavioral flexibility, which is about being a chameleon. And in the spiritual world, we say water, which is about flexibility. But we never associate with a chameleon. But Jax was so gracious to say, I'm a chameleon. And that's kind of a reframe, big shift towards how you view things. And when I chatted to Jax for the very first time, few months ago, I fell in love with her and her story and her journey. And then just before this, I wanted to get something about her to understand where she comes from. And I think she's almost like a living legend because she walks. That's true, Jax. I'm not exaggerating. I'm not being like crazy. Nothing. It's really true from my heart because Jax is one person who walks the talk with her emotions, with the turmoils, whatever comes up. She's like, when she says this, it's like, so she can cope up because that's what you will see her. She'll never say like this. She's like, okay. So I think that's the strength of Jax, that she can go through any situation. And I found her story very fascinating. So probably as now Jax starts sharing her story, I really believe and I trust it is an inspiring story for everyone. And how she transformed her body sickness to something else that will inspire her, how she viewed relationships, how she viewed the moment and the instability in life, how she saw that and how she transformed her approach altogether. And now almost she lives really in the moment. So over to you, Jax. And then I really want you to talk about your childhood because we should get a glimpse of your childhood. And if there are anything that you want to share as a message, what would that be?
Well, before we start with my childhood, I should say I'm a living legend with my dress on inside out today. I've just thought, what's that? And I've got my dress on inside out, but never mind. One of those things. I'll change it later. So as a child, when I was talking to Mana just before this section, she asked me about the pivotal moments in my life. And we got to the end of the conversation and we were just wrapping up and saying goodbye. And I went, I remembered one thing that I've completely forgotten to tell you. And it's that when I was 2 years old, my mum separated from my biological father. And I never knew my biological father. I met him in my 30s. And that, for me, is probably the thing that shaped a lot of my character, was having my dad, like the man who I call my dad, who is actually not my biological father, but he's always been a dad to me, and he's much more of a dad to me than my biological father ever was or ever really wanted to be. So I think that makes me think that biology isn't necessarily what it's all about. And actually, as I've gone through life, I've taken care of other people's children, and I've looked into fostering and looking after young people through Barnardo's and stuff like that. So I do feel that my dad had a massive influence on me. He's also a very gentle and kind man, and I think that is where I get my values from. So yeah. But then at the age of 12, him and my mum decided that they'd go off on an adventure, and they moved from a place called Bexley Heath, which is, well, it was in Kent, but then it's now been subsumed by London. So it was like a big, massive place. And they took us down to Devon, to this sleepy little town where they had a guest house, thinking that they would have this like semi-retirement, but they didn't have a semi-retirement. It was a really, really busy life. So my sister and I pretty much brought ourselves up from the age of 11 and 12. And having been thrown into a new school environment at that age, we also went mid-term, and it meant that people had already formed their friendship groups. So Debbie and I became obviously each other's best friend, and I think that's seen us through. We've lived together in recent years a lot, and I'm actually living with her now. This is her spare room. So I think, although it made me kind of be the person who sits on the outside looking in, it did give me a very, very strong relationship with my sister. So that's kind of a little bit about my childhood.
And how did you cope up with the changes? Though you had your sister as your best friend, but when you moved, you must have left your friends behind, you must have left the things that you knew behind, because most of the times people say, oh, I moved my schools, or I moved from one place to another, so I didn't have lasting friendships. But how did you cope with that?
I didn't have lasting friendships. I don't even recall any of the people that I was friends with at that time. It's almost like I moved away and I moved on completely. I didn't keep in contact with anyone. It was long before the days of mobile phones and stuff. So maybe if it had been in this age, I might have kept in contact with people, but I didn't. And I think that's where the chameleon thing comes from. I just kept reinventing myself and started again. And I think that's a theme that's probably followed through the whole of my life. And I think that that experience at that age, it made me quite resilient. And it also made me the sort of person who can let go and doesn't have to attach to things. I live and love in the moment. But if that changes, then I can accept that. And I feel quite lucky to be able to do that.
I think I would like to emphasize on that one specific thing Jax just shared, because I find most of the people, they're so attached to the thought of attachment, and they're so attached to the thought of having friendships and relationships which knows your story. They have a glimpse of your background, and that's when they believe they can form meaningful relationships and friendships. But understanding Jax and where you're coming from, you completely defy that belief. And I think I would really like to emphasize that it's about living in the moment. And when I said Jax walks the talk, this is one of the things, walking the talk without attachments. But that does not mean she didn't enjoy those moments. So I just want to check with Jax. Did you enjoy that, Jax, moving?
Yeah. I enjoy life to the maximum. I enjoy my friends. I enjoy my family. I love my dog. And I know that if I lost my dog, like Dean, I would be devastated. But I would move on from it because there's something else coming. There's always something else coming.
Beautiful. Thank you so much, Jax. And so how was your teenage years? So you talked to us about 12, up to 12. So then teenage is the one where could people take your courage? Could anybody manage the kind of person you are? You're fiercely independent and you're like a firebrand. So could people take you for who you are?
Yeah. I've still got friends from after we moved to Devon, most of my formative years were there, and I was there until 1998. So that was quite a long time. That was like 20 years. And I've still got the friends that I had there. Well, some of them. At school, I think people found me too much of a handful. I'd come down from a city environment to a sleepy town, and I think I probably was too much of a handful. I can be a bit like that. But yeah, when I did meet people and gel with them, I still maintain those friendships now. So yeah, there are people who get me.
Thank you, Jackson. How were your teenage years?
Well, I worked a lot, and I worked because I wanted to travel. So I started working in a clothes shop selling jeans and boots and handbags, and I still have a massive passion for those three things. And I loved it. I really loved being in that environment. I think I worked from the age of 13. And even before I worked in the clothes shop, I worked in my mum and dad's guest house. So I guess my teenage years were a lot around working. And when I socialise, I much prefer to be the one that's doing the catering because I like to be the one looking. I recognise that in myself, and I like to be there buzzing around. But you're usually, as Jonah Louis would say, find me in the kitchen at parties, because that's where I'm comfortable, being the one that's giving and catering for everyone. That comes from my teenage years. As soon as I got to 18, I worked behind a bar, and that was my social life. I didn't really go out and socialise. I went to work, and that's where I did my socialising. Yeah.
So if you had to revisit your childhood or a teenager again, what would you tell them? Will there be a different message you would give them, the young Jacks and the teenager Jacks?
Well, it's one that I try and give to my nieces all the time, is don't think you're fat, because you're not. Don't worry about what you look like, because that doesn't matter. It's what's inside that matters, and just go with the flow.
All right. Thank you, Jax. Yeah. So, and I think that's so important what Jax just said, because even today I had a client who is about maybe in her mid 50s or 60s, and I find her so beautiful. She's so fascinating, and I love her as a wonderful human. And then she said, I don't know if I look good. And I thought, really? I mean, outsider looking in, I'm just thinking you're so beautiful. So it's something, I think it's so important to get that at a very young age. And from your teenage Jax, I know that you started your work earlier, but you had amazing work life. So talk to me and share with us your work life experiences. You had completely tangent jobs.
Yeah, I did. Yeah. I think actually going back to the teenage stuff, I think I was a bit of a rebel, because I always said I want to work with children. I want to be a nursery nurse. And the school person that tells you what career you should have said, no, that's for the girls that aren't academic. You don't want to do that. You want to work with computers. And I was like, no, I don't. I can't bear the thought of working with computers. I always knew that I was a people person. I wanted to be with people, not with machines. So I didn't go to college when I was 16. I just went straight to work, and I carried on and worked in the jeans and shoe shop. And then I thought, oh, maybe I really should think about doing something proper with my life. So I was working probably from about 10 in the morning until about 2 in the morning. So I'd go from the jeans shop to a bar that was then turned into a nightclub. So I was just like working all the time. And then I decided that probably should try a different thing. So I took secretarial training. And then that did put me in front of a computer, where I have been in front of a computer a lot of my life. But I went back into catering, and I worked the two-job Jack. I worked in the daytime in a cafe in Brixham, and then I would jump onto a bus and I would go to Torquay, which is probably about 12 miles away. And then I would start another job where I was working in a restaurant, an Italian restaurant, and making cappuccinos before cappuccinos even became a thing. And I loved it. I like being busy, like Layla. But in the end, that had to give, and I chose the job in Torquay, and that kind of catapulted me, because I work hard and because I'm bright. People see that in me, and I get promoted. So I became the restaurant manager at this Italian place. And then I moved with the same company to this big complex. It was a nightclub and a restaurant, and we did functions, we did weddings and stuff like that. So that I did that, and I was the restaurant and functions manager for them. And then I decided that maybe I should look at different work, and maybe I should look at progression. So I went and worked at this massive 500 capacity venue in Paynton. It's all around Torbay. It's all a little tiny area. And I was the food bar and functions manager there. And it was really, really hard work, but I loved it. And there was one year I had worked the whole of December. We had Christmas parties pretty much every night, like with people coming for their staff parties. And then we started really early on Christmas Day, finished on Christmas Day. I think we must have finished about 6 o'clock. And my parents had held off Christmas lunch. So I went home, my parents and my sister, all having Christmas lunch. I literally fell asleep in my dinner. And I decided then that perhaps I needed a change of scene from there. So I jacked it in and I was just like, so what am I going to do now? And I went to a temp agency and they said, oh, we've got a job for you. There's a thing called the poll tax. And this was in 1990. And it was a tax that was really unpopular. Everyone was avoiding paying it. So everyone wanted to claim benefit. So I was on the poll tax helpline helping people claim benefit. And from there, I eventually, a few months later, got a full-time job with that council and worked on their reception. And then I became a benefits assessor, and then I became a senior assessor and a fraud officer, and then I became a team leader, and just worked my way up there. And then Debbie's husband got ill, so they were offering voluntary redundancy. It was one of those times when local government are paring themselves to the bone, like they do regularly. And I said, well, I'll take redundancy. And everyone was like, what? I was like, I'll take redundancy. So I took redundancy and I got a small amount of money. I think I got like a few £1,000 or something. But that was a springboard for me to be able to go. I went into temp work, a specialist temp as a benefits assessor. And I moved to Devizes, and I was meant to be there for like 6 weeks or something. And I was there for 13 months. And helping them implement a new computer system, funnily enough. So yeah, they were probably right when they said I should go into computers.
Yeah.
So like, that was my local government story. And then I was there in Devizes for 13 months. And then I eventually got a job in Brighton, and I got promoted and promoted and promoted until I was one of the revenues and benefits managers. But
I think before you go ahead, I just want to kind of summarize this bit of Jack's. Because people think, oh, this is a small job, or this is something I don't want to do, or so. But Jack's, either by virtue of her situations or circumstances, she took something small and she made it really big.
yeah.
And then she leaves it. So she just went to make cappuccinos in an Italian restaurant, and she becomes a restaurant manager. And then she goes into some events and venues organization, and she starts managing that business. Then she walks into a council as a temp in the sense very casual, so people really don't fancy so much. And she goes there and she becomes something else, and she starts managing people. So, and now that doesn't stop there. So I think I want Jax continue from there. And then what happened, Jax?
The funny thing was that I was made a temporary revenues and benefits manager, and they put me in charge of a project. And the project was to look at where the service was going, and there was lots of new legislation coming in. So my recommendation on the project that I was working with was that we needed another permanent revenues and benefits manager. Hello, I'm here. I actually literally created a job for myself. My friends laugh at me because they were like, how did you do that? Like, that's just mad. But yeah, I created a job for myself, a permanent job. But with that, that was so stressful. I had 50 staff under me. I had 5 different disciplines that I was dealing with. I had so much work to do that I burnt out. I had a diagnosis of chronic fatigue syndrome. And eventually I was made redundant by the council. So rather than go off sick, they made me redundant, and they gave me a nice little pot of money. So all the time this was happening, I was saying to my sister, oh, look, you know, I've been helping you, and I think I might need you to help me now. So we had a house, and we had a big mortgage. So we worked together and we got a smaller house and a smaller mortgage, but we still lived together. And it went from me being the one that paid for 3/4 of the stuff to us paying half each. And we just downsized, and the money that I got from the redundancy helped us make that house work. And then after I'd had some, they don't really give you any therapy for chronic fatigue syndrome, but I did the Ashok Gupta amygdala retraining. And that, there wasn't a lot to it really, but that's where I first got into meditation. And it was about meditating. It was about continuing with the yoga that I'd already been doing. It was about getting out in nature. And I spent a lot of time doing that. I was off sick and I spent a lot of time doing that. And that's what made me better. Until then, I eventually got myself another job that was like all the hours that God sent and stuff. I do like to be on the hamster wheel, I think.
Thank you, Jax. And I think we always say, like, when the nature kind of gives you a small unicorn push, saying, okay, you have to rest now. And if you don't listen to that, then there'll be another push. And after that, I say that can be a rhino push. So it's like pretty much it has to push you so hard that you have to let go. You have to let it loose. So you take care of yourself. I think in Jack's life, I saw chronic fatigue as that rhino push, saying, Jax, slow down, because you're not listening to these small messages that we are sending to you. So it has to give you that big rhino push. And that's how I did. And from there, how did you turn around?
It definitely was a big push for me, and I do feel that I made myself sick unconsciously. It was my mind that made that illness come to me to make me stop. And when I look back on like what I was doing in Brighton, we have lots of festivals, and they happen every year. And I lived there for 10 years, and most of the time I was working at the council and doing that ridiculously stressful and busy job, and I didn't participate in any of that good stuff. I didn't go to one of those festivals, and as soon as I stopped doing that, my whole perspective on life changed, and now I spend much more time doing stuff that I enjoy, music and theatre and stuff like that, rather than, excuse me, I'm just going to give the dog a treat.
Yeah.
Sorry, I had that prepared because I did think she might kick off, although she's been quiet till now. Where was I? So I used the chronic fatigue to actually turn my life around in a much more positive direction, I think. And I think it helped me get to the stage where I am now. And I feel that the chronic fatigue was a blessing. I do feel it was a blessing, and it actually propelled me into the life that I've got now, which I'm so much happier in.
So, and from there, what did you do? So did you take on yoga? Did you take on meditation? What was that new decision, or what was that new turning point?
I was still a bit deaf, Manna. I went on to I became self-employed and sold insurance for a while. And that didn't work very well because people don't really want to buy insurance, not from some random woman who suddenly phones you up and says, oh, hi, do you want to buy some insurance? So then I became an estate agent. And I was working from like 8 in the morning till 6 at night. I was working 6 days a week. I wasn't getting paid very much. And then one day I put a key in a lock to lock a door and held the handle, and the handle came away and I fell backwards down some steps. Wow. So not only had the chronic fatigue been a massive message, so was the accident that sent me tumbling down the steps backwards. I actually carried on working. I think my adrenaline just carried me through, and I carried on working that day, and I actually even covered some of my colleagues' viewings because his car had broken down. So it was another like, come on, Jax, you're not doing what you should be doing. Down you go. So yeah, that was another thing that floored me. And I think actually then that's when I really did make the change. And I was off work for a while. And then I started doing voluntary work for an organisation called Oxjam. And it's a spin-off from Oxfam, but it's all music related, because I'm an actual massive music fan and I love live music. And that's what I did. I created single day multi-venue music events. And I did that for a few years. But after the first year of doing it, I kind of felt a bit better. And I thought I should go back to work, really. And I ended up going and working in a children's nursery. But I didn't go ostensibly to look after the children. I went as the office manager. So I used all of the stuff that I'd learnt throughout my career thus far and employed it in the nursery. But one of the joys of that job was that I would be covering in rooms sometimes. So I did get my wish. I did get to be a nursery nurse.
Right. You manifested your wish.
Yeah, so I eventually got there. And I would probably still be there now if it hadn't been for my dad getting really poorly and having to move to help my mum and him. So I moved from Brighton to Bognor, which is about 30 miles away. And it doesn't sound very much in miles, but when your life is so busy, it's very difficult to get back to like travel that 30 miles very often. So yeah, my life took a big, massive turn then. And I didn't work for a while. I had my little business, which was called Anything Organised. And I just did little bits of events. I used to go back to Brighton for those because I didn't have any contacts in Bognor. So I just used to go and like probably twice a month I would go and I would do an event, and I love doing that. It's a joy to see other people getting married and be part of their big day and stuff. So that Anything Organised saw me through probably for about 18 months. I didn't work properly. But me and my sister had both bought houses that needed doing up. So I did a bit of that and I paid myself, and Debbie paid me a little bit for when I did a little bit of stuff for her. So everything was through Anything Organised. And I spent a lot of time with my dad, taking him out to give my mum respite. And I spent a lot of time with my mum, taking her away from the constant care situation she was in. So I'm grateful for that we were able to do that.
Thank you, Jax. So that's Jack's working life. So when you hit with the chronic fatigue, or when you meet with an accident, or you fell down like that, or when you're shifting your jobs, you're not getting enough money, or your sister's husband falls sick, it's so easy for many people to give up. It's so easy to give up and say, oh, that's it, life is over, I don't want to go further. But since we are on this screen and we are doing live, I really want to share that life is not over with one challenge, because the challenge is only a stepping stone and there is still life after that. And now we all heard about Jack's story on her childhood, about her teenage life, about her work life. And I would quickly want to ask Jack, if you had to look at another youngster or a young professional or a young person who is starting their careers, from your experiences, what would you tell them? What would be one message to them?
I would say the same thing that I said in my meditation class last night. Don't be afraid to try different things, and different things will suit you at different times. And I think that applies not only to meditation, but to the whole of life. And I would also use one of my favourite sayings, which is no mud, no lotus, that you have to go through stuff to become the beautiful flower at the end.
Oh, I love that. No mud, no lotus.
And change isn't scary.
Change isn't scary. That's right. I think that's your favorite line you said the other day. But Jax, here I would like to know one thing, because knowing this, just listening to your story, it looks like you just sailed through everything. But definitely it's not, isn't it? You would have your emotional ups and downs, and you said definitely you spoke to yourself. There is something that you spoke to yourself. There must be people you must have tried to reach out or approach to get some insights or some help. Because, when people see successful people, we think, oh, they're successful, but we don't see the days they spend behind the scenes when they are low, when they're emotional, when they have to pull themselves up. So how did you pull yourself up? Did you have any emotional ups and downs at all, or you never had it?
I've had lots. I had 5 miscarriages. So that is soul destroying, to think that you're going to have a baby and then not have one, and to have that happen 5 times. It is really, really tough. But in the end, I just thought it's not worth, like, having a child. That's great, but it's not worth the heartache. So I think I rationalised things, and I moved on from that. And I also think that having dealt with that earlier on in my life, it's enabled me to deal with the menopause. It's been easier on me because I haven't had that thing that women can get, where they feel that they're going to be barren and they're no longer going to be viable as a woman because their childbearing years have gone. So although I had that happen to me earlier in life, I think it's, sorry, my mum. So although that happened to me earlier in life, I think it helped me later in life. And I also have been married 3 times. So those relationships didn't work out for me. And when I was going through my foster care training, the lady that was interviewing me, I was telling her about, because you have to tell them about every aspect of your life. And I was telling her about how my second husband had been quite difficult. He'd had lots of issues, and he would do things like throw beer cans at me and tell me I was fat and tell me I was thick, until I actually started to believe him. And I was telling this girl about this experience I'd had, and she said, "Oh, so you were a victim of domestic violence then?" And I was like, what do you mean? She was like, well, you've suffered from domestic violence. And I was like, well, yeah, I suppose you have, but I never thought of it like that. I thought of it like he had his issues, it was him that was causing the problems. But again, it was my sister. My sister helped me out of that situation. I left him. I left him because I almost hit him over the head with a really, really big pepper grinder. And I came to my senses with this pepper grinder in my hand, and I thought, this isn't me. I don't do that. I'm not going to let this man reduce me to his level. And I left. And then I went back with my sister and some friends to get my stuff. And we'd loaded all of the stuff into the car. And I was in the kitchen of my house, and I said to my sister, I don't think I can do this. I don't think I can go. And she said, you've got to go. He'll kill you. And so I moved on, and I went through all of that, and it was very difficult. One of my friends found me crying at my desk once, because I was going through such a stressful time. But I don't ever go back and think that's part of me. I go back and think, yes, that happened, but I've moved on from that, and I can understand, I can forgive him, because I know that he had his own issues that meant he was struggling, and he was just taking it out on me. And I say that about both my first and my second husband.
I would want, before Jax continues, I think this is so profound, and that is so important to note that she said, I forgive him. Because it's so important to be able to forgive your perpetrator. It's so important to be able to forgive those who hurt you. It's important not only for us, but also for them. It's important. And what also another just one line Jack said is, yes, it happened to me, but it's in the past and I moved on. And when Jack said I moved on, she really moved on.
Yeah.
She's not holding it in her subconscious, or she's not thinking of it, because everything else is a label that we talk about, subconscious, holding it there, or because it's a story we are repeating consciously. But when Jack said I moved on, she really moved on, because she didn't allow that experience to define any of her future moments or future decisions. I think that I really found so inspiring when I heard that from Jax when I was talking to her. So the ability to forgive. So because Jax is very practical and she speaks very direct, people may think, oh, there are no emotions, or she's not an emotional person. But you heard that she had 5 miscarriages as a woman. And any person, even with one miscarriage, they can take it as a lifelong story of how they can fail. And they can say, oh, because of that miscarriage, I failed, and they keep repeating the story. But in Jack's life, not 1, not 2, not 3, 5. But she didn't allow that past, that loss to affect her. And also I'm connecting the dots when she said that about if she loses Lily, she will be devastated, but she will move on because she knows something else is coming. Mm-hmm. So I think these are so powerful, profound statements that Jack said today, and she's meaning everything about it. With 150%, she means it when she's saying it. Over to you, Jax, from here.
Yeah, that is definitely, that's how I approach everything in life, really. I don't know what to say next.
Okay,
ask
so
me another question.
I can ask you the question from here. So then once you identified your relationships, and from then on, what did you decide about? Because there's so many women who think they didn't even spoil the relationships, but they have some miscommunication in the relationship, or they must have separated once in their life, or they're about to go take divorce or separate, and they think life is over. But you had tragedy after tragedy after tragedy, 3 times, like 5 miscarriages, 3 marriages. And then how did you come back to terms to accept relationship as relationship? And did you ever go forward with another relationship with a positive framework of that mindset?
I've been single now probably for about 10 years maybe.
Yeah.
And I've come to meditation this year, to become the meditation leader this year, and I think that's really helping me work out how I would like to have a relationship in my life. I've always said I don't need one, and I definitely don't need one. A romantic relationship, I mean. I've got the dog, that's enough. But I'm also doing the yoga teacher training, and there's the thing called brahmacharya, which is about abstinence. So I thought, well, maybe I'll just be celibate, maybe I just won't have a relationship. But then the more I learn, the more I think you can have brahmacharya without complete abstinence. You can do it in a way that you are mutually beneficial to each other. And I think that's where I've gone wrong in the past. I don't think I've ever had a relationship that's been where we're mutually beneficial to each other and we're working in proper partnership. We did a thing with Peter the other week, and we were talking about true love. And I said then, I don't think I've ever had true love when you look at it in a romantic way, but I feel true love for everything and everyone. And I think if I apply that to a romantic relationship, then yes, I am open to having another relationship. I don't think that the fact that I have had 3 marriages that haven't worked means that I've failed. I think that means that I've got to learn from those and have a different relationship this time. So yeah, even though I'm 57 today, I'm still going to go for it. If the situation arises and there's somebody that I can go along my path with and we travel together, I think that's the big thing that I got out of that message from Peter the other day was, yes, if you can do it and you travel together, that's where I want my next relationship to go.
Beautiful. Thank you, Jax. Before going further there, I think there's one profound thing. Again, Jax said, what she said is, just because I had 3 bad relationships does not mean I failed. How many women can actually say that? And you really need that knowing that you're more than enough. Not only women, even men, because when clients come in and when they're talking about their relationships, just because they had one failure in their life or one relationship failure in their life, or they lost one job, or they moved away from their known contacts to a new place, they say that they had a failure. But it's not. And just from Jack's life, it is so clear that yes, there is an emotional down and then there's an up again, there is a down and there's an up again. But the strangest thing I saw in Jack's language is she never had the definition or label of failure to anything in her life. But I want to find out, is it now? So, we get this wisdom and we tend to apply to the past. But have you considered yourself a failure at any point of time? And if you did, how did you pull yourself up? Because there's so many young women and so many women I speak to. And sometimes it's so hard in order to give them that hope that there is a tomorrow. So how did you manage your emotions? How did you, when you went down there with your domestic violence and all these issues there, what did you talk to yourself?
I don't ever think that it's a failure. I always think it hasn't worked. What's next? What can I do now? I don't know whether it's the person that I am. It probably is, but I'm not the sort of person that I don't want other things to beat me. I want to be able to say, that's not going to affect me. I'm going to move on and I'm going to be better, or there is something better to come along. Like with the chronic fatigue, my life is so much better now. If you'd have told me that back when I was working in the council and I was thinking that the dollar was all the important thing, and I would have said, don't be ridiculous. Meditation? What would you want to do that for? But now I get so much pleasure out of doing that. I get so much pleasure out of my yoga, and I feel that from the chronic fatigue, and the accidents and everything else that happens in your life, it just brings you forward to the next stage. And as long as you can keep moving forward and look at what those lessons are that you need to learn, look at what life is teaching you. So like I said, with the relationships, took me 3, but I kind of realized now that I need somebody that I'm properly equal with, rather than, I think I was always striving for somebody to love me. I don't think I felt that it was an equal process. That's looking back on it. When I was in it, I didn't realize that. And I think we all have to go through those learning experiences and make sure that you do learn from them. Try not to do it 3 times like I did.
Yeah, we don't try to do that. Thank you, Jax. I think I'll also open up for Q&A. But there's one more thing. So where to from here? What's your journey? I know in COVID-19 you pivoted and you moved into your online. So where to from here, and what's the message at this juncture of your life? What's your message?
Yeah, COVID-19, I think everyone that was in the group on Wednesday had all taken something positive out of the COVID-19 experience. And for me, it definitely was a positive experience. I was on furlough. It enabled me to do my meditation leader training. It enabled me to start my yoga teacher training. Then I started doing some social media stuff, and I linked into the local council, and then that got me a grant of £5,000. And I'm just like, all of these things that you do, stuff comes to you, and it's like, I'm sorry to be repeating myself, Dean. I said this last night as well. If you can sit with yourself and understand what it is that you really want, and then you find a way to do it, then things will just come to you. That seems to me how things are working in my life. I'm definitely on the path that makes me happy. I'm always an evangelist. I'm always whispering on to people about the things that I'm interested in. But I've found with the meditation and the yoga, I try not to do that too much, because I know that it can be annoying for people. If I go on too much, people switch off. So now I mention it, and unless somebody shows interest and asks me questions, I don't go on about it too much, because I want them to come to me when they're ready. And I think that that's what this during COVID, this has come to me. The yoga and the meditation has come to me, and Claire and I have been on a really similar trajectory. We've both I think it was 2 years ago now, we were in a yoga class together, and I said, oh, I'm off to Bali, and Claire said, oh, I'm off to Bali as well, and we were going to go do the same thing. And then Claire became a yoga teacher, and I was like, oh, I've done this meditation. She was like, oh, I'm interested in that. And we're kind of like jogging along side by side, and it's all just coming to me, and I just feel really grateful. And I'm rambling, but
You're
I
not.
can't remember what the question was.
You're not. Thank you, Jax. And I think that's the story of Jax. So how many of you think that story is fascinating?
It's truly inspiring, actually.
That is Jax. So that's why I say inspiration is all around. We just have to be curious about one person, and they have so much to offer. And inspiration is not somewhere hidden, it's here. And can you believe this is the person whom we are seeing every week, talking to her, and that's the strength that she's carrying, and that's the energy she's sharing with all of us. That's Jax. So now thank you so much, Jax, for sharing your story so candidly, because many people can think, oh, you're a strong woman, but behind every strength and behind every strong moment, there is a moment absolutely where you can think you're going down. There is no tomorrow, and then you rise up. And that's what life is all about. There's an ups and crests and troughs in the life. Thank you so much, Jax. So now I would open to everybody to ask any questions that you want to ask. And Beck has given a question to Jax over here. Beck is asking you, Jax, how long after the initial impact of the breakup do you say, what's next? And what process do you go through to get there?
I think it would depend on the individual situation, but I think I'm the sort of person that will always give people the benefit of the doubt. And I think I'll keep going and keep going and keep going until eventually something really does break. And then once that breaks, that's it for me. Everyone is different. So I guess you'll deal with your own situations differently, but for me it's like, once I've broken that tie with whatever it is, that's it, no more. I don't need to look back at that anymore. I just need to look at what's happening now and then where I want to go next.
Beautiful. Thank you, Jax. Anyone has any other questions to Jax? Leila?
I'd just say, like, it's just lovely to hear your story, Jax, and I thank you so much for sharing. I would also say, like, yes, repeating what Mana said, the strength, but the fact that you always have the biggest smile and you have the most positive energy as well. Every week we see you, and it's good. It's lovely to hear the stories, you know, like, we are all capable of, you know, making something out of everything. And you've just proved it so much. Yeah, I love it. Very, very good. And I love the fact when you said Bexley Heath, I was like, oh my God, that's where I'm from, Bexley Heath. As soon as you said that, I was like, oh. And then like Bognor Regis and Brighton, and I was like, God, I know all these places. I went to all these places. I probably went to the bars, and I don't know.
Yeah.
It's like really bizarre, like how you're at the other side of the world, and I'm like here, and it's like, oh God, I know it all really well. It was quite weird.
Yeah, it's funny, isn't it?
Yeah.
Small world.
Yes, Jack.
Yeah.
It's true. Yeah.
Thank you all for listening. I don't feel like my life is special or inspiring. I think my life is just how life is, and I don't think
it's for us to decide that, Jax. You live your life, and we will decide if it is inspiring or not inspiring. And Chaitu, sorry.
Can I say something?
Yes, Claire.
I think one of the key things about you, Jax, is you're a doer. I might have similar ideas to you, but I'm like, oh, I can't do that. I can't do that. You're a doer, and I really admire that in you.
Take action. Just do it.
Just do it. I'm always, I've got a bit more fear in me. I'm like, oh, I don't think I can do it. But you're like, do it. And yeah, it's very inspiring.
Thank
you.
Yeah.
And Sam,
Yes,
did you want to say something?
Yeah. Oh, you're
Okay.
asking Sam? Okay. Yeah. Throughout your story, I heard only one thing. It didn't work out. So what's next? So I think that is a great inspiration for me to take from you, because instead of self-sabotaging or something, you took it that way. It didn't work. Okay, what's next? So all this while, like, is there somebody who supported you, or somebody who you'll fall back on? Somebody's there for you to give support, or it's your internal strength, inner strength that you coped up with all these situations?
A lot of it is internal, and I am really, really self-reliant, but actually my sister is a massive support for me. And I think it does go back from, when I was saying, when we moved from the Bexley Heath to Devon, she and I just formed that strong bond there, and we do support each other. And obviously, well, no, not obviously to you, her husband got sick, and I moved my life to help her, and I've been the second parent to her children, and I think that also has given us a special bond, and we are there for each other. So yeah, I think she's probably the one that is always there for me.
Yeah, beautiful. I think everybody should have somebody like that to vent out or express, share, things like our group, what we are having right now. Thank you, Jax.
Thank
The
you.
group
Jax.
is brilliant support, and Mana is my guru.
Thank
Nice.
you. You're my guru. And I just want to say hello to Linda. Hi, Linda. Thanks for joining in today. I can't see you, but I'm assuming you're listening. You're tuning in. Okay, yes. I just wanted to say hello to Linda. It's the first time Linda is on. All right. And then Sam, you wanted to ask something to Jax? You raised your hand.
Yes, I've forgotten my question, but I just want to answer the inspiring thing. Yes, Jack, you are inspiring. I have been in many of the same situations. Before saying what next, there is a lot of swearing, lot of blaming, lot of self-victimization, finding friends to support. Then you say what next. So you are actually inspiring. And my question was about how is forgiving easy? Because everything that you have to do, you find the next step to do. But forgiving is a big issue for me. Probably I don't meditate a lot. And I forgive, like I say, I forgive, I move forward. But if something happens, I get back to square one from where I started. And then I start finding blame game again. So was it like once you decided that I forgive and you just forgive?
Yeah.
Or was it a process?
I don't know that forgiving is easy or hard, but I think forgiving is really important, and it's not about the other person, it's about yourself. Because if you carry that hatred or whatever it is that you feel for that other person, it affects you, not them. So actually the forgiveness is the benefit to yourself. If you want some I saw your message, I'll accept you as the friend. And if you want to, I've got a lovely meditation. It's part of the Skillful Minds meditations, actually. And it's from the Hunter tradition, and it's on forgiveness. And if you want to, I'll do that with you, and you might benefit from it.
Yeah, sure. Thank you.
Beautiful. Thank you so much, Jax, for offering that. So any more questions, anybody, before we get on to our Friday meditation? Any questions from the men in the group? Zelko, Dean? All right. Okay. Thank you so much. Oh, is Dean? Oh, no, sorry. Zelko. Thank you, Jax. And thank you, Mana. Okay, that's Beck. Thank you, Beck. All right. Okay, so I think my key takeaway from Jack's life is all about what's next. And I really resonate with just do it. Because there's so many people who say, I'm stuck, I can't do it. But then I think Jack's message is just do it. That's what she says. And I think there's another important thing that she shares is change is not scary. For many, that is scary. But for Jack's, it's like, what's next? So change is not scary. And there's so many things I'm going to summarize, and I'll put it as a takeaway in the group, but there's so many things she said. So thank you so much, Jax, for sharing your story, and also thank you for being so candid and being so transparent. Thank you so much, and thank you for being who you are. And I really enjoy having you on the listening post every week. I look